Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Jenkins from Portsmouth PD in Virginia, 28 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief
Thank
Jenkins.
you. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, thank you for your time. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Give us a little bit of background. 28 years is a long time. Did you always know that you wanted to be in this career, or how did that get started for you?
After I graduated from college, I went to school, uh, criminal justice, so I knew I wanted to do something in law enforcement. Um, Went into corrections for a little while. Yeah, at the time, we were in a different environment where than we are now. It wasn't as easy to get on PDs at the time because, a lot of them were close and better in staffing. And so started out my career in corrections at juvenile level, juvenile corrections, and then from there I went to the adult corrections as a counselor, and then moved over to probation and parole. Uh, I stayed there for about 5 years, and got the itch that I wanted to look into law enforcement. I still always applied and things of that nature. So I decided I would at least dip my toe in, and I became an auxiliary police officer. And here in Virginia, in Portsmouth, auxiliary police officer basically has all the same responsibilities and privileges of a regular officer, except they work for free. And so I went through the academy for free and took my time, and took me about 6 months, and came on, and probably about 6 months after that, I was hired to come on full time, and I've loved it ever since.
So that dipping the toe in ended up with you jumping in the deep end eventually.
100% jumped in the deep end, and haven't come up for air as of yet.
I really think that all of our past experiences prepare us for the next step or the next chapter in our life.
Sure, sure.
Do you think that you starting in corrections and the trajectory that you had helped you with your position today? I have a couple things that kind of popped up in
Oh
my
yeah.
head that I'm thinking, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So do you feel like that prepared you to be a better leader?
Oh yeah, 100%. One of the things you learn um, about working in corrections is, you don't have a lot of the tools on the tool belt when you're locked inside of an institution. Your best asset is your ability to be able to communicate with folks,
Mhm.
and so your conflict resolution skills have to be honed. And again, like I said, communication is key. And so, uh, transitioning from there to probation and parole, again, you are trying to look at that other side of the coin with people, with trying to help them have a path back to restorative, frameworks within the community. And so, but still having that public safety type when folks are violating their standards of conduct, laid out by the court. And so all of that for me is kind of, when I came into law enforcement, I was a little bit older, had a little bit more experience than some of my other counterparts at that time. And I think all of that has kind of helped me uh, get to where I am today. I'm going to say this early. Being chief was never my dream. Um, I am more than blessed to be able to lead a department that I love through some very tough times, and see us with a vision. My vision for this department is to be the best in the state. And I don't laugh about that. I am ultra serious about my commitment to building a better organization, building better officers, that with the intention of partnering with our community and safeguarding it. That's what keeps me motivated to do this job.
Thank you. There are a few things I want to bring up with what you just said, but When I asked you that question, the first thing that popped in my mind is the ability, like you said, to communicate and then also empathize with people and
Yes, ma'am.
understand the nuances of the human condition, that we're all imperfect. But I love what you said of, hey, like I knew I had a job to do and I take that job seriously. I care about the job. My goal was also to try to help these individuals to lead a better life and a healthier life for themselves. And that
Yes.
really was something that I appreciated. I don't know, I don't think I told you my background at all when we first talked, but my dad was gang affiliated and he served a 6-year sentence for the sale of narcotics. So I grew up with an incarcerated parent. And
Yes.
when he got out, he was in and out for another decade plus after. So I'm very familiar with kind of the cycle. And so I appreciated
Yes.
that sentiment of like, hey, like I wanted to help people to lead a better life. And I think that those qualities are exactly why you're in the position that you're in today of saying, hey, like I want to help my people to live better lives. I want them to feel like they're supported and that they can thrive in the environment that they're in. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I've heard this time and time again. I'm curious, how you feel about it because I do think that effective communication, especially in challenging situations, takes a lot of mental training. It also takes a lot of emotional regulation, right?
Mm.
It's
Mm.
harder to take a tactical pause, and like take a breath and choose to respond in an effective way for de-escalation. Um,
Yes.
how do you think you were able to train those skills of not quickly responding to a situation and being able to kind of choose how to effectively, de-escalate a situation? Because that's something I think a lot of people want to be able to do, but it's difficult. So, was there anything that you did specifically that helped you in that area?
Totally transparent. If it was a mistake to make, I've probably made it at some point.
Me too.
And then I am very much human
Mm,
in this. I run the full emotion when it comes to things that dealing within the community, especially when during this day and time that they're not necessarily grounded in fact. But what I also know is that this uh, being in this position requires a certain level of it's bigger than me,
mm,
and that the things that I say represent this organization in this city, and that tactical pause in dealing with um, sometimes that crisis communication part, the messaging, and trying to get it right is very difficult, but it does it takes practice, and I would tell anybody that is aspiring to be a chief or is handling to embrace those opportunities, big and small, um, of trying to get in front. There are no secrets in law enforcement. I mean, you look at television, we pretty much put everything out at this point. I think, to a detriment to us, sometimes we're not as forthcoming with those things that don't necessarily paint us in a bad light, but we've not always told everything associated with certain situations because it wasn't public information. But if I got a missing person in the area, and you're starting to get these inquiries, and what are y'all doing? Here's the other fact of that. The person might not be missing. They might have run away. And does that change the complexion of what the officers are doing, what we're doing, and how we communicate that? Uh, I do watch a lot of chiefs from across the country. I spend a lot of times watching press conferences,
mm,
and I wanted to say to a lot of the chiefs, y'all are doing an amazing job with navigating a challenging field today, because I watch some of the questions, some good questions and some very bad questions. But uh, I think that as a whole, we're trying to uphold the standard that people have put forth on us as law enforcement professionals, and while protecting the image of not only the folks we serve, but the community as at large.
And I was just having this conversation. It's an incredibly high standard. I had someone just recently say, and I think it's true, that you are one of the only professions in our country where the expectation is perfection,
Yes.
and this is my opinion. I don't think that perfection exists. And so it's an unrealistic expectation to think that anyone or any profession is going to be absolutely perfect. We can
Yes.
strive for perfection. I think the pursuit of striving to be the best that you possibly can is worthwhile, but it's a incredibly high standard. And one of the things that I really appreciate, and I've talked to a lot of leaders who are this way, and I think that it's a really powerful skill to be able to have that humbleness about you. And I appreciate that you said it was trial and error and that you've made mistakes along the way because it's relatable, and like how do we learn and how do we grow from the mistakes that we make over time because it's inevitable. We're never ever going to be perfect. And I have also fallen on my face more times than I'd like to admit, but it's how do we get back up and how do we move forward from those things to become better? And
Yes.
I appreciate that. And one of the questions I had for you, because I think that sometimes we kind of forget where we came from. I've done this before where you kind of, reach these pinnacles in your career and you have these certain achievements that maybe you want and then you finally get it and then it's like, okay, what's next? And I've had this happen for me. I don't know if you can relate to this at all, but I've had, certain periods of stagnation where I'm like, all right, like I'm on top of the mountain, like, I guess I've reached the end here. And as a
Yeah.
leader, how can you continue to have that self-assessment and continue to grow, especially after reaching that pinnacle in your career?
Yeah. So I will tell you that is that is a challenge. Um, uh, I can remember playing football in college and the my coach talking about conversations about how we look at keeping um, ourselves grounded and not necessarily uh, reading what is written about you. Sometimes you can get the what they used to call the proverbial big head because you see your name in print or you're in television. I think it's very important for uh, chiefs to stay grounded in the reality of the moment, especially if you're in an area like I was or like I am. At the time I became chief, I was probably the fourth chief in 6 years.
Mm,
And so um, the carousel of not only chiefs but city managers was had made this a very difficult seat to sit in. So it took a lot of for me to understand there is a window of time that I will have to be able to do some things within the organization, and then that window may close. So that kind of helped me to
mm,
kind of just stay grounded and focus on what was important to be able to do. I will also tell you that it is very important for chiefs to never stop learning. The
mm,
minute you think you know it all, you are setting yourself up for failure. Um, whether you are or you're continuing to educate yourself through trainings or through additional education, or even if you just are meeting with other chiefs and talking about issues that are going on, it's important to have a network that you can build upon. And I think you have to continue to pour things into yourself, even if it's, I'm a police chief, but I'm getting ready to take a human resources course. Um, maybe I need to look at taking a course on procurement. All of those things just kind of help me look at, what additional things might look like. But again, just staying grounded in the moment. because our moments change so rapidly.
Yeah.
Um, a 4-3 vote in most areas, depending on where you are, unless you're on a strong mayor type governance, um, that's sometimes a difficult environment for a chief to navigate.
Yeah. There's this, you made me remember this. There's this like Instagram social media clip that's going out right now that's like pretty viral. And it's this message from this older woman. She's like in her 80s. And it was saying, if I woke up in my 32-year-old body, right? And she was talking about life stuff, and how she used to look at herself in the mirror and criticize herself for being old. And now she looks at herself and realizes how young she is. And then she had young kids at home and, used to get really frustrated with the young kids. And now she like hugs them really tight. It's this
Right.
idea of one day we're going to look back on this time in our lives and we're going to want it back. There's going to be certain
Oh yeah,
parts of it that we're
absolutely.
going to be like, wow, like if I could go back for one day and be the chief of police again, if I could go back in one day and be, 35 again and, with young kids or whatever it is, and so I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in the grind of things, that we don't realize that this might be one of the best moments of our life and something that that we wanted. Like we
Right.
would be so, our younger selves would be so proud of, who we are today. But then we're also going to look back one day on this time. And so I like this idea of like understanding that this time is limited and trying to make the best of it and do the absolute best job that you can and try to stay as positive as you can and continue to learn and to grow.
Right.
Do you think that, because we have this conversation a lot about leadership and wellness, and how kind of the higher you get, maybe the lonelier it is, and how we talk a lot about officer and employee wellness, and then we forget about executive wellness. Do you think that learning and, self-development has been a part of your wellness? And is there anything else that you've done, to kind of keep yourself in a positive mental, physical place so that you can be the most effective leader?
Yeah, I this is kind of gonna sound a little crazy.
Okay.
Um, but I think if anybody that's a chief today has probably got a screw loose. Um, and I say that because to be in this job today, you have to embrace chaos. Um, and sometimes for me, the chaos is the peace. Um, I think of it like, wow, I really and truly get the opportunity to do this job. Again, this was never my dream. I could have retired from this, 2 years ago. But I really get to lead a place that I grew up in as a young officer, that I had my blood, sweat, and tears and laughed and cried and all of those things. And I now get an opportunity to build the next generation of police officers, build the next policies that hopefully will be lasting, that will make us better, make our officers better, um, make us just better overall. And so, some of the things that I do to kind of keep me grounded, avid motorcyclist, ridden cross country, ridden to California, um, and love boating. Uh, and really like a lot of different, working with my hands and projects. Those things offer me, just additional peace. When we were talking just a second ago about um, looking back at yourself and remembering things, something I started about a year or so ago was when my officers retire, I started making them shadow boxes.
Mm.
Our policy says that, they'll get a plaque and things of that nature. And, I like to make things. So I started making the shadow boxes. And um, I was making some a couple of weeks ago. And as I'm going through and I'm putting the stuff in the box, and the coins and the pictures and the uniform and all that. And I said to myself, wow, I'm putting 30 years of a person's career in a box. And it kind of was just an epiphany for me that everything that we do eventually ends up in a box,
Mm,
even us.
mm,
And so it just was one of those grounding moments that, yeah, I'm going to hang this on my wall, but this is a representative of this time that I had doing something. And it's the same thing that when my time is done and my Lord calls me home, I'll end up in a box. And so, again, I know that was, but it just kind of spurred a thought for me of something that I thought about. And, you know, longevity does have its place. And um, there is a start and an end point in everything.
yeah. No, I've never heard it that way, and I actually was like getting a little emotional when you said that, and um, I think it's so important. And some of the things I don't even know if you recognize that you say them, but maybe you do. But you know, this idea of how can we have gratitude for all of it? You know, how can we try to do the best, live our best, and appreciate it along the way? Because I think we forget about that. And how can we look back on a career and a life and be proud? Because it does end one day. And I started doing something for myself that is also maybe seems weird. I didn't start it till I was 30, but I started writing myself a letter every year. So
Wow.
it's like really quick, you know, just like these are the things that happened this year, and it could be small things or little things. But my hope is that I can look back one day, you know, and be like, wow, like I lived a great life and
Right.
a life I'm proud of. And I think that that's the best case scenario is that, you
Yeah.
know, we're proud and, you know, the people around us are proud of the things that we did too, because we know that it all comes to an end eventually. And it happens a lot quicker than we think. You know, I
Yeah,
can't believe
absolutely.
that we're here today. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm 35. That's so weird. But one of the things that you've mentioned a few times is this idea of, you know, while you are here in this position, how can you build up your organization? How can you provide resources for the people within your organization so that they can live the best life
Mhm.
possible? What are some of those things that you've done? And I know that there's quite a few things that you guys are doing organizationally and, you know, messaging that you have around wellness, but can you maybe give us a overview of some of the things that you've done?
Sure, sure. Just like most departments across the country, we're trying to mitigate our officer stress. When I was a young officer, probably like many officers that are probably in my age bracket, it was, you go to a call, you see something traumatic, it's, suck it up and go to the next call. And you learn over the course of time to compartmentalize those things. Um, but the one thing that we never really look at is where that we manifest those things later on in life.
Mm,
Sometimes it's through drugs and alcohol or through risky behavior, but and other poor decisions. But um, you know, learning how to mitigate the stress that this job brings, and seeing individuals many times on their worst day is so important, and it really is. Uh, Something that's probably a long time coming. And again, it's not necessarily the softening of law enforcement or the officers. It's just understanding that there are things, suicide amongst law enforcement is more prevalent today than probably ever. And it is important for us to understand that we need to look at how many times we're sending the same officer to deal with a traumatic situation before we're having that person sit down and give an assessment and training our other folks to kind of look for those signs uh, of when folks are out of character. Unfortunately, last year we had uh, a police lieutenant that I worked for and worked with. He and I came on the department. He was here when I got here, and we worked our way through the ranks. I worked for him when I was in charge of the homicide unit some years ago, and just a good, solid, quiet guy. But he was a very well liked, well known lieutenant in the department. And last January, he retired from service after about 25, 26 years of service with our department. And in July, he had killed himself. And so, you go back and you asked, and talking to, one of the um other guys who had retired who talked to him regularly, and he said, man, I didn't see the signs. I talked to him all the time, and and talking to his wife, she talked about how he would talk about some of the scenes that he had gone to and how images start to manifest itself, but also that he really didn't have a plan. So he spent a lot of time just sitting around. And so, you know, talking through some of those things, her and I spoke probably about right before Christmas, and we sat down and had a conversation. And she's going to help me develop a program within the department to be able to address this situation when and if it should happen again, because there are a lot of things we weren't prepared for.
Mm.
Um, with, when you have a widow having to navigate through that, we assigned a battle buddy per se to kind of help her navigate some of the things through city and so far as benefits and funeral arrangements. And but again, that kind of needs to be something that we're better prepared for. And it definitely is something that don't wish on any organization, but I can tell you, you'll be so much better if you take the time to prepare for it. A couple of things that we've done internally within the organization here within the last couple of years, we've put together a wellness room for folks where we call it a mood room for lack they're better of. It has a massage chair and a, uh, a a couch per se, for lack they're better of, where they can come in and kind of decompress after a call. We've kind of given the sergeants the autonomy to be able to go in and allow folks to be able to do that within reason, uh, so that they can kind of just take a breather for a moment if they need to. Um, we recently were certified through our state as a peer support group. I thought it was important that we make sure that we had qualified peer support individuals on the department, and that we put together those situations and debriefs after crisis situations to kind of just start some dialogue to make sure we're doing regular check-ins with people. Most recently, we rolled out a app where we've put that on every one of our officers' cell phones, and they have the ability to go in and speak with someone anytime, any day to talk about issues that they're having. It's totally anonymous, but it gives financial support, it gives wellness uh, support, it gives uh, physical fitness support, and we've even rolled that out for our retirees too. They can log on and get access to that. We're really trying to address people where they are and give them some of the tools that hopefully will help them long term. I would love to see people be able to do 25, 30 years in this profession, but it is hard. And if you don't take care of yourself in your mental state and your physical state, this job can consume you before you know it.
Yeah. You know, I've said this a few times, and I think it's unfortunate to say it, but I do think that tragedy brings perspective, and it brings light to both sides. You know, what are things that went really well and what are things that could have gone better? And so, through that tragedy of being able to zoom out a little bit and say, okay, what are some things that we can now do better in the future? How can we learn from this? How can we grow from it? And how can we honor this person in a way that is productive and respectful moving forward? I really appreciate the focus of how do we put in place resources as early as possible to be proactive? And then how can we also have more of a conversation around preparation for retirement? How can we also support spouses and make sure that they have the resources that they need because they're also in it, with the officer, with the employee as well. And so, thank you for kind of going check by check on some of the things that you've done.
Yes,
How do
ma'am.
you feel the receptiveness to wellness has been over the years? Do you see, kind of a shift moving in the direction of, the stigma, kind of going away? Do you feel like it's an uphill battle? I've had these conversations a few times within, organizations of
Yeah.
where are we with, individuals' receptiveness to taking advantage of these things?
Well, I think there is the mere fact that we're even having this conversation right now shows that there is some progress.
100%.
You know, to me that it was too taboo to talk about suicide. It was taboo to talk about um, I'm having an issue. Um, the reality of it is if you live this life long enough, you're going to go through something. And how you prepare going through something is when you're not going through something. And so this is really the opportunity right now for us in law enforcement to put those things in place when we may not be going through something that will prepare us for that.
Hmm.
And every one of us in these positions, we concentrate on emergency management and active shooter and how we respond to everything else, but we don't take the opportunity to prepare for if one of our own takes their life, or how we mitigate and support them if it happens to someone else within their family. These are things that our younger officers, this next generation, is requiring of us in leadership to be um, understanding of the different challenges today. And, I can't tell you as a 50 plus year old man that I understand um, what a 25-year-old is going through. Um, I don't really want to date myself, but so much. But heck, I'm 23, 24 years old. Um, Cell phones were still flip phones,
Hmm.
and so life has changed quite a bit within such a short period of time, and the influences and the pressures and all of those things to be great. Folks come in and apply to be a police officer, and they expect that, hey, I want to be chief in 6 months. And and these are real pressures that they put on themselves. Um, and so I really think that the conversations that we're having today to normalize the fact that wellness should be and needs to be a part of how we treat ourselves and how we treat each other. And we need to develop an eye to be able to look for and look and understand when people are going through something. And with the understanding we might not know how to fix it, but we do have the resources to be able to direct them to the people who can help.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's probably the most important. Normalize it, talk about it. Uh, you know, it it's important for your folks to be able to see you um, sometimes in a vulnerable state. Um, and whatever that means for you. But it goes a long way with credibility during times of turmoil.
Yeah. I've never heard it put that way of the best time to prepare for something is when something's not happening. What I find to be really interesting is because I agree with you. I think that normalizing and having these conversations is really important. You guys prepare for everything else proactively. You have so much training for if there's an active shooter, we do this. If there's this scenario, we do that. And if this scenario happens, here's what we do. And then what do we do in the aftermath? And there's all of these things that you guys prepare for prior to ever experiencing any of that, right? And so,
Yes.
same concept goes with wellness. It's like, okay, we know that these things could happen and have happened. So, how do we prepare for them now before they happen? And I
Yes.
think that when we can compare those two, it feels like a no-brainer of like, yeah, obviously, why is
Yeah.
there a stigma for that? If we can relate this to the job and you guys are super on board with having all the tools, resources, and training to be able to handle things if and when they come up, but also be prepared, proactively, then why can't the same concepts be applied for wellness without the stigma? Why can't
Yeah.
we have that
Yes.
training and the resources and the conversations and be better equipped and prepared proactively and not just be like, yeah, that's what we do. Like
Yeah.
we know it could happen. We've seen it
Yeah.
happen before. We know
Yeah.
the result of not proactively preparing for these situations. And so how can we, start to bring down those barriers by maybe having those, correlations of like it's just another training that we're doing that we know is going to be helpful for us in the future.
Yeah. I think the my boss says hope is not a plan.
Mm,
And I think we are a lot of us hope that we won't have to deal with those situations. Um, I tell my people to, every year I give them goals for the year, for the organization, and I ask them to develop goals for themselves. And my word for this year is upgrade. I want us to upgrade our thought processes. I want us to upgrade our facilities, our policies, all those things. But the reason I bring that out is I need them to challenge everything.
mm,
That old notion of um, and ask, why do we do it that way? Because you're going to get the answer, oh, because we've always done it that way. Well, that may not work for us today. And so while no way perfect, um, the idea is for us to really look at where we are, do some self-evaluation, and figure out, is there a better way for us to do it? And again, I commend a lot of the chiefs across the country because you folks are trying. Some of the ideas that I get and see come from you all, and I thank you all for your willingness to share those things because, you know, a person coming into this position with that deer in the headlights look. Um, Now I'm in charge with of folks that I care about and I want to see them succeed. I wanted to get it right. And so I spent a lot of time just to kind of looking and seeing what you all were doing. And a lot of you are doing some amazing work in the arena of mental health and wellness, not only in your communities, but within your organizations. And that's what's going to be needed for us to, one, get out of this hiring crisis that we're in within law enforcement. Um, we're going to have to make sure that we have the ability to make it so that a person can do this job
mm,
and want to do this job because law enforcement isn't getting any easier and the requirements on us aren't getting any less.
mm. I wrote it down because I thought what you said, hope is not a plan, was really powerful. And I think that to your point, and it's a really good reminder for anyone who is listening to what you just said, there's so much power in coming together as a community, sharing ideas, looking at the people who are doing it really well and trying to emulate each other and understanding that, because I think sometimes we feel like we're on our own island. Sometimes, it doesn't matter what career you're in. I think we all kind of get inundated with the day to day and we're kind of in our own
Yes.
headspace. And so for you to say, you know what, like I wanted to get it right. And so I leaned on my community and I looked around at other people in my position and what they were doing. And I was inspired and motivated by them. And I was able to take all the best things from everybody and try to implement that. I think that there's so much strength in community and team, and everyone is stronger together. And so, how can we continue to share ideas? How can we continue to have these conversations and share the things that not only went really well, but also things that maybe didn't go very well, so
Yes.
everyone can learn from each other. And I think that, yes, your organization, you guys are a team, but your profession is a team too. And I think we can kind of start to zoom out, you know, state by state. We could go even smaller, like,
Yeah.
county, state, and then nationwide, and just really try to have these collaborative conversations and ideas to move the profession in a positive way and to inspire the younger people to, come and do this job. And I do think that it's a very admirable job, and it is a very challenging job. And, my last question for you, because I do want to be respectful of your time, is for the young men and women who are entering into this career today and are choosing to do this job, even though it's a really challenging career and a challenging climate right now, what words of wisdom would you share with them? Maybe something that you wish you would have known when you were, just starting out, or something that's helped you along the way that could help them too.
I think wow, I think so. If I was a person talking to someone, the advice I would give them is this: never forget that you matter.
Mm.
Never forget that you have a family to go home to, and that they're there to support you, and that you don't have to carry the burden of this job by yourself. I would tell them to immerse yourself in the education uh, of this profession and become an expert as much as possible in whatever you desire to do within this profession, and to always stay thirsty for knowledge, to try and remain humble, and always remain professional, and never forget to care about people. We're in a people business. And to be great at this job, you have to care. The minute you no longer care, and I know, we're cynics, and sometimes our police humor is how we get through the day, but you still have to care. And whether that's caring about the man or woman next to you in the same uniform, or whether it's the person that you responded to that just cursed you out, understand that it's not you as an individual, it's probably what you represent. And you got a job to do. Um, and like I said earlier, wow, you get to be a police officer. There are a whole lot of people who probably will never tell you, wish they could do what you do. And it's an honor to do this job. Um, it's been one of the best experiences. And again, I'm like to consider myself a working chief. I'm still making traffic stops and arrests. And, sometimes my folks tell me I need to go sit down. And it's not because I'm micromanaged. I just like being a cop. I mean, sitting at the desk sometimes is boring. I mean, working through budgets and talking to, this person, that sometimes you just want to get out there and get in it. And so embrace that time, because it is over faster than you think.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Yes, ma'am.
time. I really, I
Absolutely.
really enjoyed this conversation very much. So thank
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the invite. And think you're doing a wonderful, wonderful thing here.
thank you.
Again, chiefs need to, anybody that's interested in law enforcement, but chiefs need to be able to hear from other chiefs. Because again, this is a difficult time.
Yeah,
But thank you again.
of course. No, I appreciate it.